I never believed in the supernatural. I was always the rational one, the skeptic who had an explanation for everything. But last night, driving through Blackwood Forest, something happened that I can't explain, something that's made me question everything I thought I knew about reality. And now, sitting here in the daylight, with my hands still shaking, I need to tell someone what happened before I lose my mind completely. It started innocently enough. I'd been visiting my sister in Millbrook, a small town about 3 hours from where I live. The visit had run longer than I'd planned, and by the time I left, it was already past 9 in the evening. I should have stayed the night, but I had an important meeting the next morning, one I couldn't miss. So I kissed my sister goodbye, promised I'd text her when I got home, and headed out into the darkness. The route back was straightforward. Take Highway 47 for about 2 hours, then cut through Blackwood Forest on Route 16. It would shave off a good 30 minutes, and I'd driven it dozens of times before. Blackwood Forest had never bothered me. Sure, it was dense and dark, with trees so tall and thick they blocked out the moonlight, but it was just a forest. Just trees and animals and the occasional deer crossing the road. I remember turning onto Route 16 and feeling relieved. The highway had been busier than expected, and I was tired. My eyes were starting to feel heavy, and I was looking forward to the quiet, empty road through the forest where I could just zone out and let my GPS guide me home. I turned up the radio, some late-night talk show discussing conspiracy theories, and settled in for the drive. About 10 minutes into the forest, my phone chimed. I glanced down at the GPS mounted on my dashboard. It had been showing the usual route, Route 16 straight through for 23 miles, but now there was a notification. Faster route available, it said. Save 12 minutes. I frowned. I'd never seen an alternate route through Blackwood before. The forest was crisscrossed with old logging roads, sure, but most of them were unmarked and dangerous, especially at night. But 12 minutes was 12 minutes, and I was exhausted. Without thinking too much about it, I tapped accept. The GPS recalculated, and a new blue line appeared on the screen, showing a turn coming up in half a mile. Turn right onto Ashwood Trail, the automated voice said. I didn't recognize the name, but the GPS had never steered me wrong before. I slowed down, watching for the turn. When I saw it, my stomach tightened just a little. The road, if you could even call it that, was barely more than a dirt path cutting into the trees. There was no sign, no marker, nothing to indicate it was actually a road. But the GPS was insistent. Turn right onto Ashwood Trail, it repeated. I hesitated, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter. Something felt off. But then I told myself I was being ridiculous. It was just a shortcut. People use these old logging roads all the time. I turned right. The moment my car left the paved road and hit the dirt trail, everything changed. The temperature seemed to drop, and the darkness became thicker, heavier, like it was pressing in on the car from all sides. My headlights cut through the trees, but they seemed dimmer somehow, like the forest was swallowing the light. I told myself it was just the canopy, the way the trees blocked out everything else, but my heart was starting to beat faster. The GPS continued its directions. Continue on Ashwood Trail for 4 miles. 4 miles. That wasn't so bad. I could do 4 miles. I focused on the road ahead, or what I could see of it. The trail was narrow and winding, with deep ruts and exposed roots that made my car bounce and jolt. Branches scraped against the sides, making horrible screeching sounds that set my teeth on edge. I wanted to turn around, but the trail was too narrow. There was nowhere to go but forward. Then the radio started acting up. The talk show I'd been listening to dissolved into static, sharp and crackling. I reached over to change the station, but every channel was the same. Just static. I turned it off, and the silence that followed was somehow worse. All I could hear was the sound of my engine, the crunch of dirt and leaves under my tires, and my own breathing, which was coming faster now. In 800 feet, turn left onto Merrill Lane, the GPS said suddenly, breaking the silence. I jumped, my heart hammering. Merrill Lane? I'd never heard of it. I glanced at the screen. The blue line showed a sharp left turn ahead, deeper into the forest. I wanted to ignore it, to just keep going straight until I found my way back to Route 16, but when I looked ahead, the trail seemed to just disappear into darkness. There was no road. The GPS was the only thing guiding me now. Turn left onto Merrill Lane, it repeated. I turned left. This road was even worse. The trees were so close I could barely see anything beyond the immediate circle of my headlights. And then I started noticing things. Strange things. At first, it was just a flash of white in the trees, like fabric blowing in the wind. I told myself it was just trash, someone had dumped something out here, but then I saw it again, closer this time. It looked like a dress, a long white dress, hanging from a branch. But there was no wind. The dress was perfectly still. My hands were sweating now, slipping on the steering wheel. I pressed harder on the gas, wanting to get past whatever that was, but the GPS immediately chimed in. Slow down. Speed limit enforced. Speed limit? Out here? There were no signs, no markers, nothing. But I slowed down anyway, because what else could I do? That's when I saw the first house. It appeared suddenly on my right, set back from the road, barely visible through the trees. It was small and dilapidated, with broken windows and a sagging roof. But there was a light on inside, a flickering orange glow like a candle or a fire. I stared at it as I drove past, my skin crawling. Who would live out here? And why was there a light on at this time of night? In 500 feet, your destination will be on the right, the GPS said. My blood ran cold. Destination? I didn't have a destination. I was just trying to get home. I looked at the screen, my hands shaking. The blue line ended at a point just ahead, marked with a red pin. Arriving at Shadow Creek Church, the GPS announced. I slammed on the brakes, my car skidding to a stop in the middle of the trail. Shadow Creek Church? I'd never entered that into my GPS. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I tried to open the app, to see what was happening, but the screen was frozen. The GPS was still showing that red pin, that destination I'd never asked for. I tried to close the app, to restart my phone, but nothing worked. And then I saw it. Just ahead, emerging from the darkness, was a church. Or what was left of one. It was old, ancient-looking, with crumbling stone walls and a collapsed steeple. The windows were empty, gaping black holes, and the door hung open, swinging slightly as if someone had just walked through it. But the worst part was the graveyard surrounding it. Dozens of crooked headstones, leaning at odd angles, some covered in moss and vines. And standing among them, perfectly still, were figures. People. Or at least, they looked like people from a distance. I couldn't breathe. I sat there, frozen, staring at those figures. They weren't moving. They were just standing there, scattered throughout the graveyard, facing the road. Facing me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I needed to get out of here. I needed to turn around. But when I looked in my rearview mirror, the road behind me was gone. Just trees. Dense, impenetrable forest. There was no way back. The GPS chimed again. You have arrived at your destination. And then, in a voice that didn't sound quite right, not quite human, it said, please exit the vehicle. Terror shot through me like ice water. I locked the doors, my hands shaking so badly I could barely manage it. Exit the vehicle? Was this some kind of sick joke? I looked back at the church, at those figures in the graveyard, and that's when I realized they were closer. They'd moved. They were standing at the edge of the road now, just beyond the reach of my headlights. I still couldn't see their faces, just dark silhouettes, but I could feel them watching me. My phone suddenly came back to life in my hand, the screen flashing bright. A new message appeared on the GPS: follow the path to the church. They are waiting. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. This wasn't possible. This wasn't happening. I was losing my mind. I had to be. But the figures were still there, still watching, and I could hear something now. A sound. Soft at first, but growing louder. Singing. They were singing. A low, mournful hymn that seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing through the trees. I threw the car into reverse, not caring that there was no road behind me. I had to get out. I had to escape. But the car wouldn't move. The engine revved, the wheels spun, but it was like something was holding us in place. And the figures kept getting closer. I could see them more clearly now. Their clothes were old-fashioned, tattered and rotting. And their faces, oh God, their faces. They were wrong. Pale and bloated, with eyes that were too dark, too empty. Some of them were smiling, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was hungry. I screamed. I don't even remember deciding to scream, but suddenly I was screaming, slamming my hand on the horn, on the dashboard, trying anything to make the car move. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The singing cut off. The figures froze. And the GPS spoke again, but this time it was a different voice. My voice. Turn around. Go back. This isn't real. I didn't question it. I threw the car into drive and stomped on the gas. The tires caught, and suddenly we were moving, flying down the trail, branches and debris flying everywhere. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just drove, following the trail as it twisted and turned, praying it would lead me out. The GPS was silent now, the screen black. My phone was dead. I was completely alone, racing through the darkness, with no idea where I was going. And then, miraculously, I saw it. Up ahead, through the trees, a flash of light. Headlights. Real headlights on a real road. I almost cried with relief. I pushed the car harder, faster, and burst out of the trees onto Route 16. The paved, beautiful, normal Route 16. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I just drove, my whole body shaking, tears streaming down my face. I didn't stop until I was out of the forest, until I saw the lights of the nearest town. I pulled into a gas station, my hands still gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. I sat there for I don't know how long, just breathing, trying to convince myself I was safe. That it was over. But it's not over. Because when I finally worked up the courage to check my phone, to see what had happened with the GPS, I found something that made my blood run cold. The app showed my route from last night, the path I'd taken. But according to the map, I never left Route 16. The trail, Ashwood Trail and Marrow Lane, Shadow Creek Church, none of it existed. There was nothing there but solid forest. No roads. No church. Nothing. And yet, I have proof I was there. My car is covered in scratches from the branches. There's mud caked on the tires, mud that shouldn't be there if I'd stayed on the paved road. And worst of all, when I checked the photos on my phone this morning, there was one I didn't take. It was a picture of me, in my car, on that trail. Taken from outside the driver's side window. And in the reflection of the glass, behind me, I can see them. Those figures from the graveyard. Standing right behind my car. Watching me. Smiling. I don't know what happened last night in Blackwood Forest. I don't know if it was real, if it was some kind of hallucination, or if there's something truly evil in those woods. But I know one thing for certain. I will never drive through Blackwood Forest again. And if your GPS ever tries to take you somewhere that doesn't exist, somewhere off the beaten path where the darkness feels just a little too heavy, don't go. Don't trust it. Turn around and find another way. Because some shortcuts don't lead you home. They lead you somewhere much, much worse. And I don't think I was supposed to come back at all. I think I was meant to stay there, in that church, with those figures. And the fact that I escaped, that I'm sitting here telling you this story, I don't think that means I'm safe. I think it just means they know where to find me now. And one day, maybe soon, they'll come to collect what they think is theirs. Me. Number 2. Professional thumbnail prompt. Create a hyper-realistic horror thumbnail set in Blackwood Forest at night during an extremely dark, moonless evening. The background features a dense, menacing forest with towering dead trees whose gnarled branches reach out like skeletal fingers against a pitch-black sky filled with ominous fog. Through the center of the forest runs a desolate, cracked asphalt road that disappears into the darkness, illuminated only by a faint, eerie greenish mist. On this haunted road, place exactly 10 terrifyingly realistic zombie babies in various disturbing poses, some sitting cross-legged with their heads tilted unnaturally, some standing with arms reaching out, and some lying down as if sleeping but with their eyes partially open revealing white, lifeless pupils. Each zombie baby should have decaying flesh, tattered clothing, and an unsettling presence. Add dramatic lighting with subtle red and blue tones to create depth and horror atmosphere. Position 3 bright red arrows pointing directly at different zombie babies to draw immediate attention and create urgency. At the very top of the thumbnail, add the text "True Horror Story" in extremely large, bold, blood-red letters with a distressed horror font that appears to be dripping. Add a subtle black stroke and red glow around the text to make it pop against the dark background. Include small subtle details like abandoned road signs, distant car headlights creating an ominous glow, and shadows that suggest more figures lurking in the trees. The overall composition should be perfectly balanced with the text occupying the top third, the zombie babies strategically placed in the middle ground creating a focal point, and the atmospheric forest creating depth in the background. The thumbnail must evoke immediate fear and curiosity while being visually striking enough to stop viewers mid-scroll and compel them to click.